Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-905-9814. That's 1-800-905-9814.
Do you have an old car, truck, or van taking up space in your home? You can call the number below today and donate it to the United Breast Cancer Foundation to help save a life. Our qualified personnel will go to your home to pick it up completely free of charge. Donating your old truck or SUV helps pay for the programs available to women affected by breast cancer who need your help. Please help us to help others. Call now.
Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We're going to wrap up the week talking about the latest on the twin scandals that Governor Cuomo is dealing with, and also the status of the nearly $2 trillion COVID relief bill. But we begin tonight with a Capitol riot as investigations continue to look into what happened and what President Trump knew and when he knew it. Retired Army General Russell Honoré, the man appointed by Speaker Pelosi to look into security issues as well as failures, he's set to brief lawmakers about his initial findings Monday afternoon. This comes as we learn that federal investigators, they're examining records to determine, get this, whether or not sitting Republican lawmakers aided and abetted the rioters. Initial data reportedly shows some of those members of Congress were in touch with some of the attackers, but we don't know yet any of the details. Plus, the FBI announcing that it arrested a guy who was a political appointee of Trump's in the State Department. He is now facing charges saying that he stormed the Capitol and assaulted an officer. Congress, they have been holding hearings on the riots over the past 2 weeks, and some telling information is now coming out. But so far, they are raising a lot more questions than answers. One big issue, why wasn't law enforcement better prepared, especially since there was ample warnings that violence was possible on January 6th? In fact, there were several questions about the internal warnings that were issued by the FBI's Norfolk field office right before the attack, saying extremists were preparing to travel to D.C. to commit, in their words, war. Take a listen to what the head of the Capitol Police Force on the day of the riot had to say about that report.
The United States Capitol Police Department did get that report. I was just advised of that in the last 24 hours. That report made it from the Joint Terrorism Task Force over to our Intelligence Bureau, over to a sergeant there, and ceased moving forward at that point. No leadership, myself included, over at Capitol Police was made aware of that at the time of the event.
You would think that war would escalate to the top, but okay. Another huge issue that keeps coming up, why did it take so long for the National Guard to show up? Take a listen to the commander of the D.C. National Guard.
At 1:49 p.m., I received a frantic call from then Chief of United States Capitol Police Stephen's son, where he informed me that the security perimeter of the United States Capitol had been breached by hostile rioters. I alerted the U.S. Army senior leadership of the request. The approval for Chief Son's request would eventually come from the Acting Secretary of Defense and be relayed to me by Army senior leaders at 5:08 p.m., about 3 hours and 19 minutes later.
So the obvious big question, why did it take so long, and what was Trump doing while the attack was occurring? Now, multiple reports say that Kevin McCarthy, the GOP leader in the House, he called Trump during the riot to get him to control his supporters, and that led to a shouting match that was ear-witnessed, with Trump apparently yelling at McCarthy, telling him that those people, the rioters, are more upset about the election than McCarthy is. Trump, he was totally silent during the first hours of the riot, but at 4:17, he tweeted out a video telling his followers to go home, but he also complained the election was stolen, and he told the rioters that he loved them. And now that we know more specifics about when the cavalry was finally called in, let us take a look at the timeline for that day. At 1:49, the plea for help from the head of the Capitol Police. 2.5 hours later, Trump tweeted the video that I just told you about. At 4:32, 15 minutes later, the Pentagon says the request for the National Guard was approved, but the Guard commander wasn't notified until 5:19. Those delays are leading to rampant speculation that the military brass waited hours, perhaps for Trump's approval, before mobilizing. I want to bring in the perfect guest to discuss all this, someone who knows firsthand how everything works at the top of the chain of command, Elizabeth Newman. She was the Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism in the Homeland Security Department during the Trump administration. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for the time.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I said before, it takes a lot to surprise anymore, but when I heard General Walker's testimony, and in real time contradicting the man sitting right next to him on the panel about the real timeline, about the calls, about the unique limitations that were put on him in the day and the 2 days prior to the riots, you know, I had to pick my jaw off the floor at certain times. I'm curious your reaction when you heard his testimony.
I think it confirmed what many of us had suspected. There was something about, look, the entire event, if you've been in Homeland Security for the last 20 years, nothing went according to our plans. I mean, we have gotten very good at dreaming up and trying to imagine scenarios of our worst day, coming up with plans to respond, exercise those plans. It just defied logic as you were watching the events of January 6th happen. I don't understand why the security was so weak, especially since I'm outside of government and I was expecting violence. Many experts that do open source analysis were looking at the chat rooms of these groups online. They were expecting violence. So how they were so unprepared was shocking. And then the fact that it went on so long, that reinforcements were not called up. I mean, you immediately, sadly, very sadly, because you shouldn't have to think this way about your government, but you immediately went to, this is being politicized. Either the president is holding this up or the people immediately underneath the president are afraid of upsetting the president and they are holding it up. I think there is a scenario where some of the people at the DOD were very new. The senior political appointees had basically been pushed out in November, and they brought in others who were, in my view, not qualified to be in those positions. There is one perhaps explanation, that is they just didn't know how to do their jobs. But there is this nefarious concern that I don't think we have an answer to, and it needs to be explored because the American people deserve to know why it took so long for Capitol Police to get the reinforcements that they needed.
So there are moments in the timeline, not even of the day, but the days leading up to it that, and you forgot more than I'll ever know, Elizabeth, but that just don't make sense to me. One is the date and the location were chosen. The president chose to have the rally, and he chose to have it in view of the Capitol for that exact day, the date of the certification for the election. In the preceding days, I'm imagining that the daily briefing was saying, we've got concerns here. People are coming that have bad intentions. One of a few things would logically then happen. The rhetoric may be changed, let alone the speakers on the podium. Certainly, if you're worried about bad actors being in the crowd, you're not going to say, I'm going to walk you up, I'm going to be with you shoulder to shoulder as we go to the Capitol right now. It couldn't be out of left field that this was a potential threat. I got to imagine, Elizabeth, somebody told the president or his chief of staff or whatever else, be careful on January 6th, we're worried.
Yeah, I would hope so. I have to say, part of what's fascinating about these hearings, watching representatives from DHS and FBI, people I used to work with, they really do seem to be blindsided by what happened on January 6th. And they acknowledge they shouldn't have been. But what they seem to assert is that they did not connect the dots. So one of the questions I have is, how did all of us on the outside connect dots, but the people on the inside that have that duty to warn, that have the responsibility to connect the dots, how did they miss it? Was it out of fear? Was it, I don't want to do something that might upset the president, so I'm just going to look the other way and hope for the best? Or was there, perhaps an unconscious bias, a perspective that you've heard several of them say, hey, look, these groups came together in November and December and nothing happened other than like spillover violence, protest, counter-protest, bar fight type of stuff. So we really didn't see that this protest would be any different. Whatever the actual facts are, and I think we need a commission to fully understand how this went so wrongly. I think that there is no doubt that the federal government has underestimated the threat of domestic violent extremism. Even when we at DHS and the FBI prioritized it 2 years ago, within the system, there just was this kind of treatment of it that it was something of, lone actors that walk into a synagogue or a Walmart. It's not a big group of people. So I think there was maybe a misunderstanding of the threat at play as well. So all of that to say, I think it's actually entirely plausible that nobody told the president. However, this is the strong caveat. I don't think maybe anybody in the counterterrorism or law enforcement community told him, but we know that the people that his political advisors, the people that manage his Twitter account, they were seeing this rhetoric. They knew that the crowds were riled up. They knew that they were playing with fire. So I think they probably said something to the president, like when he said this is going to be wild. I think they knew it was going to be wild. I'm not suggesting that they actually thought that they would be able to storm the Capitol, but I think they knew that this was different, and I'm pretty sure that they told the president.
Then, Elizabeth, we get to what we believe we know, or certainly hasn't been contradicted by some of the players involved. And that is, clearly, when the riots began, the world saw what was going on. The president had to know what was going on. And I know he was not exactly off of electronics, because he reached out to Leader McCarthy. He also made a separate phone call that we know of to Senator Tuberville, all in an attempt to not certify the election or to condemn reportedly McCarthy, who hasn't denied the account from another Republican that was there, to say, well, listen, they're more loyal than you are, in effect. We don't know yet if Mike Pence called, but his wife and his kid were there with him when people were trying to hang him. So are we going to find out, do you believe, who talked to whom in calling the White House to send the cavalry, and why at the end, apparently, I see Pence's name to finally say send them, but not the president's?
I think we have two ways that we might start to get at the root of this. One is through the investigations. We're already starting to see that as they are arresting people, that gives the FBI the ability to start looking at phone records, and that's starting to help us connect dots to who else might have been involved in the planning or who might have aided and abetted. So I think we should keep an eye on that, because that might end up showing some interesting connections. And then the other is that I really think we need a commission, much like we did post 9/11. It needs to be independent, bipartisan. It needs to have subpoena authority. And we need to get to the bottom of not just what happened on that day, not just the really bad response, but all of the factors that led us to that moment where you had so many people who continue to believe that the election was stolen. Understanding how that happened so that we can make recommendations so that we don't continue this problem in the future. The disinformation problem in this country is very significant, and it will end up corroding our form of government. It is almost impossible to have a healthy democracy if you have almost half of the country receiving the level of disinformation that happened over this election cycle. So we really need to look into what happened to bring us to January 6th, and we need a deeper understanding of the domestic violent extremist movements that I want to be very clear, the groups that are involved with January 6th only represent about 15% so far of who's been indicted. That means about 85% of the people that have been indicted indicted for moving into the Capitol and committing vandalism or perhaps violence, they are considered unaffiliated. They are your average MAGA Trump supporter. But 15% of those that have been indicted are neo-Nazis, militia groups, and other violent extremist organizations that we should be very concerned about, that continue to pose a significant threat in our country. And that 15%, we really need to better understand what is happening in our country with those violent and extremist movements, and we need to update our laws so that we can go after that threat with equality in the same way that we go after international terrorism.
All right, coming up next, we're going to have more of my conversation with Elizabeth Newman, including her take on the investigations into whether or not any Republican lawmakers aided and abetted the rioters.
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for dental visits. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for transportation to my doctor. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay to have my prescriptions delivered directly to my home. Did you?
These and more are important benefits some Medicare Advantage plans may give you. So if you're eligible for Medicare, call us right now, because you may be eligible to enroll in a plan with amazing additional benefits. Some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for services like these: dental visits, vision coverage, hearing coverage, home delivery of drugs, even gym memberships. Some plans may include no copays for many services and 0 deductibles. Don't wait to find out if you're eligible to enroll in a plan that may include some of these wonderful benefits you deserve. Call us right now. The call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation. Make this free call now to learn if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that may include additional benefits you want. Call.
Help. When you fall and can't get help, help. You will lie on the floor for hours or days in constant, terrible anguish, which often results in a tragic outcome. But with Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
Don't worry, help is on the way.
With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately, whether at home,
I've fallen and I can't get up,
in the bathroom,
I've fallen in the shower,
or on the go.
Help! I'm in the park and I can't get up.
And batteries never need charging. Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-215-6582. That's 1-800-215-6582. Call now. 1-800-215-6582.
Attention timeshare owners. This is an urgent consumer alert from the Timeshare Exit Hotline, a national company specializing in helping consumers legally get out of their expensive timeshare contracts. We're offering you a way to legally get rid of your timeshare. So if you're fed up with the maintenance fees that keep on coming and want to learn if you can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, call today. Call the number on your screen today. It's a free call.
I think it's just vapor with flavor.
It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes, right?
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
My kid?
My kid knows it's dangerous.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
At the top of the show, I told you about one of the most disturbing aspects when it came to the attack in the Capitol, and that was whether or not we had an enemy within, whether or not members of Congress actually helped the rioters. Now, the FBI, they're investigating that very question right now, but the allegations are not new. Take a listen to Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill of New Jersey speaking out just a week after the riot.
Those members of Congress who had groups coming through the Capitol that I saw on January 5th, a reconnaissance for the next day, those members of Congress that incited this violent crowd.
Let's bring back Elizabeth Newman, a former top official in the Homeland Security Department, to discuss that as well as more. In the day or days after the riots, I interviewed Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. She's a moderate Democrat and also military service to her record. And I got to tell you, Elizabeth, I was shocked then. She said to me, I got real security concerns about people that are in the Capitol with me. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, I'm talking about fellow lawmakers. We've now seen that the FBI is looking at actual communications, phone records, as to whether sitting members of Congress may have aided or abetted some of the principals involved in the riots. We've heard, again, I've talked to people on and off camera, again, that are not just, people who are throw around incendiary comments for the fun of it. They said it did not make sense, given who was banned, how some lawmakers were giving tours. There's no way, it takes you years to figure out how the building works, but people knew which doors to go to, how to navigate this Byzantine hallways and everything that we have. They knew where they were going. It is so chilling to think that we could have members of Congress. I mean, that's treason if you're working with these kind of elements. And I know I saw a note that you said they should be looking at a Congressman Gosar. You've heard names like Brooks and the rest. I hope this is all wrong, but my God, if it's right.
So if you're a member of Congress and you're hanging out with these guys, that alone, at a minimum, if it was unwitting, you should be censured. So we send a strong signal. If you knew it was illegal and that you were basically fraternizing with a violent extremist organization, I think you should be expelled from Congress. And then we go to that next level, which is absolutely criminal if they actually aided and abetted the insurrection. And that's where we really have to wait on the investigations. We need the criminal justice system to do its job and find those connections, be able to prove it in a court, and they should be locked up. It's beyond whether you should hold office. You should be put in jail if you contributed to the insurrection.
Do you believe that we at our peril, my hope is that after people saw what happened on the 6th, that some of the folks that bought this QAnon insanity realized that all these, conspiracy theories didn't come true, and they stepped away. Or if you're an Oath Keeper or some of these other militias that you see that you're being branded a terrorist and anti-American, that they'll now hopefully stand down. At our peril, do we think they've learned their lesson, or are they actually incentivized by what happened on that horrible day?
I think it looks really dangerous right now. I'm not overly optimistic that we have too many Republicans with integrity, but I'm doing what I can, and I know others like Adam Kinzinger and Ben Sass and Mitt Romney were trying to stand up and hold people accountable for doing the right thing and speaking the truth.
And shockingly, a target of that day, Vice President Pence, inexplicably continued to further this as recently as this week. But Elizabeth, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously we just spoke about the election lies that Trump and his supporters keep spreading to this day. Later on this hour, we're going to be speaking about the GOP efforts as we speak to clamp down on voting rights as Democrats want to get more people to the polls. But up next, new developments in both of the scandals that Governor Cuomo is dealing with and could cost him his job. One of his accusers airs her complaints during a network TV interview, and we get new information on the nursing homes controversy. After the break, a state lawmaker who used to work in Albany, he'll join us to discuss.
This is a national healthcare alert from the 24/7 Diabetic Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one has diabetes, listen closely. Now, regardless of your age, if you have insurance, you may qualify to receive diabetic testing supplies with little to no out-of-pocket cost. Get free delivery, free information, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers for free. Call the 24/7 Diabetic Health Hotline now for details. Toll free at this number. But wait, there's more. If you call right now, you could get a meter upgrade. In addition, we'll give you a free pair of diabetic socks as our special gift to you. Regardless of your age, if you suffer with diabetes and have insurance, you may qualify to get free delivery of your supplies. Call now. We can help.
Call 1-800-972-0451. 1-800-972-0451. That's 1-800-972-0451. Call now.
Villains, robbers, bandits, crooks, they're all over your TV screen. But the biggest thieves are behind your screen. I'm talking about the cable companies. They charge monthly subscriptions, fees, rentals, and force you to take long-term contracts. Well, it's time to say goodbye to the cable guy, because now you can watch 4K Ultra HD broadcast TV for free. Introducing Clear TV's new 4K Ultra HD design, the Premium HD. Just plug it into your TV and start watching for free. You will instantly receive top-rated network shows, local news and weather, sporting events, and even Ultra HD 4K broadcast shows, all for free. Thanks to federal government mandate, all broadcasters are required to transmit a digital TV signal through the airwaves. The new Premium Clear TV lets you bypass cable or satellite to bring network and 4K broadcast shows directly to your television. Retract the antenna to keep it small or extend them for maximum reception.
Setup was so easy. I took my Clear TV antenna, plugged it into the back of the TV, and now I can watch my favorite broadcast channels anywhere in the house for free.
We're just off the coast here in the Gulf of Mexico receiving free network broadcast HD TV. Imagine all the free shows you'll receive at home. Basic cable and satellite services can cost you up to $80 a month. That's $960 a year and almost $10,000 over a 10-year period. Watch TV in as many rooms as you like with no additional monthly fees. Stop spending money you don't have to spend. Call or go online now and get your premium Clear TV 4K Ultra HD antenna for only $19.95. It's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee. Order now, and you can add a second Clear TV free. Just pay separate processing and handling. That's a $40 value for only $19.95.
I can't believe I get all these channels for free. Plus 4K Ultra HD. Clear TV is for real.
Governor Cuomo said that he has never propositioned anybody. Do you believe that he was propositioning you?
Yes.
For what?
Sex.
And to be clear, what made you think that he was trying to sleep with you?
Without explicitly saying it, he implied to me that I was old enough for him and he was lonely.
People will watch this and say, why didn't you get up and leave?
It didn't feel like I had a choice.
He's your boss.
He's my boss. He's everyone's boss.
That's Cuomo accuser Charlotte Bennett speaking out for the first time since she made her allegations against Governor Cuomo. Now, just 24 hours earlier, Governor Cuomo addressed the harassment allegations during an emotional press conference, but he didn't mention any names.
I now understand that I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable. It was unintentional. And I truly and deeply apologize for it. I feel awful about it. And frankly, I am embarrassed by it. And that's not easy to say, but that's the truth.
This comes, of course, as we're getting new details about scandal number 2. The nursing homes. Wall Street Journal and the New York Times reporting that top Cuomo aides told state health officials to intentionally remove the number of nursing home deaths from a public report. It is worth noting that Cuomo says that information was deleted out of concern that the Trump administration would use it as a political cudgel to go after the state of New York. Now, as we speak, federal prosecutors are investigating the Cuomo administration's handling of the nursing homes, and the state attorney general is probing the abuse allegations. But despite the fire hose of bad news out of Albany, people, well, if you believe the polls, they're still evenly split on how they feel about their governor. His approval rating sitting at 45%, but bear in mind, it did hit 70% last year. Also, the majority of people don't want him to quit, but they also don't really want him to run for a 4th term either. And now state lawmakers today voted to strip Cuomo of his emergency powers to deal with COVID. Again, both the Senate and the Assembly have Democratic majorities. Joining us now is a Democrat who used to serve in the state Senate, David Carlucci. David, how you been?
I've been great. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
You as well, and you're certainly doing better than the governor right now. Is it surreal given where the governor was less than a year ago, even just months ago, in terms of not just the state, but in a national standing? I remember people who were trying to figure out ways to draft and be the Democratic nominee for president late in the process, but also the vice-like grip he had on New York politics for so long to see him so vulnerable.
I think one thing is certain here, that we are going to see real change from these scandals. That I think it'll be some long-term changes. And as you covered earlier today, you talked about how the Attorney General will be doing an investigation. However, that only came about after real outcry, because people finally realized that the only way you can investigate a governor is with the governor's approval to do that. And the governor submitted a waiver to allow for the Attorney General to conduct an investigation. This is something that has to change. I know my former colleagues in the Senate have drafted legislation to change that process and really give the Attorney General some more power when it comes to investigating the governor and other entities in New York State.
You know, David, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is, you know how Albany works, but also as not being a sitting lawmaker right now, you don't have some of the baggage that a lot of other folks do. It is no secret that if you worked in Albany on either side of the aisle and in either chamber, there was a fear factor of Cuomo. You crossed him at your own political peril. Listen, I even got an angry phone call from him at a time here. So we all know what it's like to be on the other end of the call. That said, do you think people are still afraid to cross him because they don't know how this ends, or is the fear factor of Cuomo no more?
Well, it's a good question. Now, I was saying earlier, I was actually presenting at a conference last week and talking about the governor and how in New York State, the Constitution gives the governor tremendous power. But on top of that, Andrew Cuomo knows how to activate every level of power available to him. From, studying as a young man when he worked for his father, the governor. He's really been a student of government, of power, and he knows how to execute every lever. But with that said, I think this has exposed a new opportunity for lawmakers to really push back. And as you saw earlier with Assemblyman Kim coming forward and talking about an aggressive phone conversation that he had with the governor, another thing to keep in mind is that the legislature does have a veto-proof majority with a sense of support from the public that if they are to pass these reforms and the governor were to veto them, I believe that they have the ability to override them, and they would have the support of the public as well.
It's interesting, David, because there is, and you know where I'm going with this, I can count on one hand the people who are going to decide if Cuomo survives or not. Obviously, Tish James, who's going to be running the probe, but also Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Right now, she said, let's wait to see the findings of this. But I think if either break and say Cuomo's got to go, I don't think he can survive. And to that, there is a lot of political ambitions in New York, but not a lot of dance chairs, and a lot of people want to sit in them. I don't think Gillibrand or Schumer going away anytime soon, and that leaves on the statewide level obviously the plum job being governor, and he's up again next year. The political motivations, and don't be PC with me, tell me, come on now, it's got to be running through people's minds. Tish James has got an opportunity potentially to be the Democratic nominee for governor if she wants it. I can make the argument about a few other people here. That's got to factor into the calculations if and when they decide to say that Cuomo's got to go.
Absolutely. I mean, my theory in running for office is if you're a current elected official, that the best way to campaign is to do your job as well as possible. And now Tish James, it's definitely got to be on her mind, but she's in such a position now that she has to execute with integrity and really be have the faith that she's doing the right thing and not using it for political motives, of course. And her just doing that, I think, would put her in an amazing position to be the next governor. With that said, I think there's probably many politicians in New York that would love that position. It's a tremendous position and one that you can do so much good or bad if you're not doing it right. So I think there's many people that will think about this. But yeah, you'll see, I think, over the next coming weeks, a whole bunch of politicians on both sides of the aisle that will start to position themselves to be the nominee of their party in 2022.
I might have the minority position on this one in terms of his handling of the nursing home scandal. I think the biggest mistake that the governor made was that he's given me 3 different versions of an answer. One is, listen, I had to do what I had to do because I was afraid the Trump administration was going to penalize New York here because they were looking to get us. 2, I didn't do anything wrong. I was upfront about it, and I got people trying to make political hay because they're doing convenient accounting. And then the other one is, well, yes, maybe we weren't as transparent as we could. We didn't change the actual number of deaths. We just had them in the wrong bucket. I believe, and correct me, David, if they just said one of those versions and they just stuck with it, at the end of the day, yeah, they were maybe more than a little cute here in how they did the story, but it's not that they hid the total deaths, it's where they died. And again, I'm not trying to be callous, but I think the optics or the messaging has been a bigger problem than even the action itself.
Right. And you know this, you've covered it over and over again, where the cover-up is worse than the crime. And yes, it is a damaging number. It's a startling number, the deaths that we've seen. But you're right. It's the faith, it's the trust, it's the integrity. And when that starts to erode, that's where the real problem comes. And I think that's where we're having this difficulty. And where you have the nursing homes, you have the treatment that's coming to light of the way the governor interacts with the legislature and other colleagues. And then you have the sexual harassment. So it's just piling on top of each other. And I think the public starts to not know the details of each accusation, but it just piles on, and the public gets confused and kind of wants to, distance themselves from that situation.
Listen, I know more than a year and a half in politics is about 5 lifetimes. So before the election, correct me. I say if there's not more revelations, if there's not more assault claims and legitimate ones that come forward, I think he survives. Would you take the opposite position if you and I had to lay down a marker here? Do you think he makes it, or do you think he doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, working closely with the governor over the past decade, he's probably the smartest person in politics, masterful. So if anyone was going to outlive some of these controversies, it would be Governor Cuomo. I wouldn't bet against him, certainly, after working with him all these years. It's a rough a couple of months ahead. Remember, right now is the midst of the budget negotiations, and makes things it's always tense, but this adds another level of intensity to those negotiations. So yes, another part that we'll have to see is, what does this investigation that the Attorney General is leading, what does that tell us? But I would give it to you and kind of agree that, as the governor said, he refuses to resign. This is someone that knows the ins and outs of New York State government better than anyone else. So I wouldn't put it past that, again, depending on what this investigation says, that he survives and makes it through the term. But as you saw in the polling, a 4th term for any governor is very difficult, but particularly given the circumstances, it makes those prospects, bleaker and bleaker.
David Carlucci, Senator, as always, it's good catching up. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
You too. All right, folks, we come back. Instead of trying to encourage more people to vote, Republicans doing everything they can to reduce the number of people who can cast their ballots. After the break, I'm going to show you how that's happening on the state level and also in the highest court in the land.
Important healthcare news. Announcing a 24/7 telehealth plan with fast access to doctors. Telemed One provides live doctor video and phone access nationwide. Visit a board-certified doctor in your state by mobile, computer, tablet, or landline. Fever? Feeling sick? You now have a doctor on call. Get diagnosed and a prescription quickly sent to your pharmacy. According to the AMA, up to 75% of doctor urgent care and ER visits can be managed by telehealth. Call now. Get protected.
IRS, open up.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the country and has the power to seize assets, garnish wages, and even put you in jail for back taxes and unfiled tax returns. Don't be a victim. Call Kick IRS right now and let us kick those IRS problems out of your life once and for all. Our powerful team of tax experts will fight hard for you and will not stop until we've resolved your tax problems on your terms. And if you qualify, we may even reduce or eliminate your tax debt altogether. No more sleepless nights wondering when the IRS is going to come after you. Take control of your tax problems today and make the phone call. We have an A rating with the Better Business Bureau, and we offer a 100% written guarantee, so there's nothing to lose and everything to gain. The consultation is free, and the phone call is free. So pick up the phone right now and kick those IRS problems out of your life once and for all.
Call 1-800-284-0468 to get the tax help you need today. Again, that's 1-800-284-0468 or go to kickirs.net.
Mary and Shirley both need oxygen. Shirley lost her freedom the day she went on oxygen, but Mary has the ultra-compact Inogen 1 G4 oxygen concentrator from Inogen. It's the smallest and lightest model we've ever made, so she'll always have the oxygen she needs anytime, anywhere. The sooner you call, the sooner you can reclaim the freedom and independence you deserve. Call now for your 30-day risk-free trial.
Call 800-683-1390. That's 800-683-1390.
This is important news for people who took certain drugs for HIV and then suffered serious injury to their kidneys or bones. If you or a loved one took Truvada, Variad, Atroplus, Stribild, or Complera and were then diagnosed with kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, bone density loss, or softening of the bones, call Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Our first consultation is free, and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call Davis & Crump right now. Operators are standing by.
Earlier in the show, we discussed the probe into the Capitol riot. Now, it's rightfully getting a lot of attention. That is, new details and new questions come to light. But there is a lot more happening on Capitol Hill, debates that will have huge impacts on you and your family. And for that, let's bring back Andrew Whitman.
And Rich, after a lengthy delay, the Senate is now getting into the nitty-gritty of the stimulus bill. The delay of 10 hours and 43 minutes last night in the middle of a national emergency came thanks to Wisconsin Republican Ron Johnson, who had to sit in the chamber the entire time because nobody else wanted to help him delay the debate. A slew of votes and amendments expected today as we speak, including a tweak to unemployment benefits. An effort from Bernie Sanders to put the $15 minimum wage back in the stimulus bill failed in an early vote this afternoon. This after the House passed a sweeping election reform bill earlier in the week, and it reads like a Democratic fantasy for voting causes. It would guarantee mail-in voting, no reason needed, guarantee 15 days of early voting, make states automatically register every American adult to vote, give voting rights to all felons, require paper ballots, force the disclosure of dark hidden political donations. It would also require states to use independent redistricting commissions, set standards for election equipment like vote reading machines, require disclosures for all online political ads. It would set an ethics code for Supreme Court justices, restructure the FEC so it can no longer get stuck with tie votes, and require presidential candidates to release their tax returns. No wonder Republicans hate this bill. But as that's happening, 106 bills in 26 states have been advanced to restrict voting access. And the Supreme Court this week heard a voting case and seems primed to allow even more voter restrictions. All that requires some analysis, which leads us to Dahlia Lithwick. Dahlia is the senior legal correspondent at Slate Magazine. Dahlia, I actually want to begin with the state legislatures, those 106 bills in 26 states to restrict voting access, because I don't think this point has been made clearly enough. Republicans are using Donald Trump's lies about election fraud as the basis for these restrictions. The big lie didn't work in 2020, so they're trying to use the big lie to change the rules and game the next election. Fair read?
A fair read, and I might even go so far as say that number has been updated. The Brennan Center has amped up the number 253 bills with restrictive voting access provisions in 43 states. The Brennan Center is calling this the most significant wave of restrictions since the Jim Crow era. So this is off any chart we've ever seen. And you're completely right. The rhetoric is all rooted in this idea that the last election was stolen, so we're going to prevent future vote fraud by making it almost impossible to vote.
Now, in a rational America, Democrats could take those changes to federal court, but the federal court is now littered with Trump and McConnell appointees, and Speaking of which, the Supreme Court hearing this week. We saw the headline, "Court appears to favor upholding voting laws that lower court found unfair to minorities." Is that a fair reading of how the arguments went? And if they rule that way, how much more damage will legislators be able to do on voter access? Will it be a race to the bottom in these states?
It's interesting because I think going into this particular argument, which is called Brnovich versus the DNC, this is probably the signal voting rights case, probably the most important the court has heard since Shelby County in 2013 that gutted Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And going into this particular lawsuit, I think a lot of us felt like this is the end. This is the death knell for Section 2, which is the only section of the Voting Rights Act that still could be useful. It looked like an effort to kind of sideline that, in which case I think you're right. Then it's just fair game. It's just hunting season. There's no way for civil rights groups to protect themselves. It was a funny argument in some sense because the defenders of these two Arizona measures that were being challenged under Section 2 took such an extreme position that at one point Justice Elena Kagan was challenging one of the lawyers saying, so you're saying even if you forced all voters to go vote at a country club that had a history of restricting its membership to whites, that could be okay? And even conceding that was problematic. So in some sense, the argument didn't go as badly for voting rights advocates as some of us feared, because the position that was staked out by Arizona and the Republican Party defending the law, defending doing away with Section 2 was so extreme that even the conservatives were like, oh, I don't think we want to use that test. So in some sense, this case may not be the death knell for Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, but it's clear, I think, that there are 6 members of the court that are looking for some vehicle, if not this one, to end Section 2 as well.
I'll come back to the court hearing in just a moment, Dahlia, but we also went through that list of election reforms that the House passed this week. It was like an oasis in the middle of a voting desert. And I'm sure those reforms would be fantastic if passed. But if the Supreme Court sides with the restrictions in the case they heard this week, wouldn't the court be primed to overturn that House bill even if it passes, especially because the bill also sticks ethics rules on the justices themselves?
I think the fact that there's tons of stuff in there that's going to be challenged shouldn't distract from the fact that this is the single most, I would say, existential moment in democracy reform that we're seeing in this country. Whether every single page of this 800-page bill survives, whether it even survives Senate, the attempt to pass it in the Senate, isn't the question. I think the question loops back to where we started, which is if we don't construct a world in which the right to vote is protected, the principle of one person, one vote is absolutely secure, then you are going to see more and more and more state efforts, red state efforts, to circumscribe the right to vote. So my sense of it is, we'll talk about what parts of it are going to be struck down by the courts. There's already a huge, huge effort, dark money effort, to say the whole bill is unconstitutional. So you're right, that's coming. But I think the larger issue is whether or not it's going to be struck down by the courts. This laser focus on how we restore the integrity of elections has to be issue number one, even in COVID times, issue number one if we want to have a fair election system.
And Democrats are saying the bill's all about fairness. Republicans are almost unanimously saying it'll hurt their electoral chances. Sounds like they're both right.
I think they're both right. And just to go back for a second to that Supreme Court argument on Tuesday in that big voting rights case, there was an amazing moment when one of the lawyers who was trying to say, oh, Section 2 doesn't apply, it's never going to apply, Amy Coney Barrett was challenging him on, why are you even in this case? Why is the Republican Party in this case on behalf of upholding these Arizona voting restrictions? And his answer was this completely amazing confession that we're in this case because, as he said, the Republican Party interest is to remain at a competitive advantage relative to Democrats. He said voting is a zero-sum game. And it was kind of saying the quiet part out loud. Everybody in the courtroom was like, oh, did he just say that they're in the game to suppress the vote? But I think that goes to your question in some sense. Both sides agree that if this effort to make it harder and harder and harder, particularly for minorities, particularly for the poor, particularly as long as pandemic continues for the ill, to get to their polling places, if this really persists, it will be because I think red states realize that the landmark turnout in the 2020 election, the amazing desire of the American people to vote despite all these restraints, that's the thing they're trying to choke now.
Finally, Dahlia, we've had updates from state legislatures, from Congress, and from the Supreme Court. What about the Biden administration and especially the Biden Justice Department? Quickly, is there anything they can do to either reverse these restrictions or at least try and slow them down?
The Biden Justice Department is still not staffed up. In some sense, the civil rights folks are still facing real headwinds in terms of even getting confirmed. So it's going to take a minute for them to get in the game here. But I think it's absolutely clear that Biden has appointed people to his Justice Department like Vanita Gupta, like Kristen Clark, even Merrick Garland, who take the right to vote very, very seriously. My sense is he could have picked other people if this wasn't a priority. So I believe that he is signaling with these appointees, if they get confirmed, that, again, issue one, top of the charts for this voting rights issue at the Justice Department will be making sure that we go back to an era of serious one person, one vote democracy reform.
Dahlia Lithwick is the senior legal correspondent with Slate. Dahlia, it's always an education. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Rich?
Andrew, thank you. When we come back, believe it or not, I got some good news for you. We're going to show you a few inspirational stories of people helping other people. We all need a shot in the arm right now.
Are you over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days? I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. Call now for this free book on maximizing your income in retirement. Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers from leading financial firm J.D. Milberg. That's right, free. This book reveals little-known truths about annuities in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now because we're about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known truths we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity. And it's free.
Call 800-258-6979.
As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. We researched numerous products and summarized rates and benefits of annuities, all from Sentinel Security Life Insurance Company.
Call 800-258-6979. That's 800-258-6979.
Call attention. If you've had a hernia surgery after 2006 and suffered from serious side effects such as infection, chronic pain, organ damage, mesh shrinkage, or mesh migration, you could be eligible for financial compensation. Call the law offices of Wright & Schulte right now at the number on your screen or visit meshjustice.com now. Ethicon, a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, has withdrawn its PhysioMesh flexible composite mesh from the market. Again, if you've had complications from your hernia surgery after 2006, you could be eligible for financial compensation. We can find out what type of devices were used in your surgery. Call the law offices of Wright & Schulte immediately at the number on your screen or visit meshjustice.com now. You deserve justice, and the call is free. And there is no fee unless we win your case. Call now for your free case evaluation. Again, call the law offices of Wright & Schulte immediately at the number on your screen or visit meshjustice.com now.
8 years ago, my daughter called to say she was expecting our first grandchild, but I never heard her say it. So a few years ago, Gina bought me a nano hearing aid. And now I love hearing Ryan call me Papa. And at only $297 for a full pair, they make a great gift for someone you know. Plus, call now and order 1 hearing aid, and Nano will give you a second absolutely free.
Call 1-800-238-2857.
So I've done a pretty good job this hour of depressing you as it relates to investigating a riot where my own government may have been involved. I've talked about a governor basically hanging on by dear life to his job with 2 controversies ongoing right now, and people trying to take away our basic right to vote, a political party embracing such an insane proposition. So the least I owe you is to send the week out on a good note. I'm going to now get out of D.C. and show you some heartwarming stories of everyday Americans doing their part to help other Americans. A Florida man who traveled to the small community of Harper, Texas to help his girlfriend recover from last month's destructive winter storm has ended up staying to help the rest of the town. Aaron Davis said he heard other residents needed supplies and chainsaws, so he started a fundraising campaign. He's also cleared playgrounds and he's picked up downed trees. Davis says Harper feels like home now.
You want to put it in there?
I can. A 7-year-old in Alabama using money from her lemonade stand to pay for her own brain surgery. Liza Scott started the stand last summer to pay for things like toys. But last month, she was diagnosed with cerebral malformations that cause seizures. Her mom, Elizabeth Scott, says Liza always wanted to help, so she volunteered to raise money. So far, Liza's taken in more than $12,000, but an online fundraiser has also pulled in over $290,000. And an Arizona teenager who beat COVID-19 wants to help other teens who may be suffering from long-term symptoms of the virus. 16-year-old Lydia Pistorius created a website called chronicconnections.org, where teens can not only keep a journal tracking their long-haul symptoms, but connect with others going through the same thing. Pistorius hope that users can find comfort in similarity. And we'll be right back to wrap things up.
I knew I needed to get a home security system, so I did my research and read reviews on Consumer Affairs.
Protect your home. An ADT authorized premier provider wants to help you feel safe by offering you a complete home security system, free, featuring $850 in free equipment with professional monitoring starting at less than $1 a day. With installation starting at $99 and 36-month monitoring contract for new customers only. Termination fees apply.
Call 1-800-413-6141. Call now.
Is your bathroom looking old and worn out? Want to update it, but you don't know where to start? Then let BCI Bath & Shower show you how to turn that old bath into an aisle of beauty and functionality. Our residential bathroom solutions provide the best value on the market, and our customer service is second to none. Our cost-effective BCI Bath & Shower family of products has what you need.
Remodeling our bathroom was a big decision for us.
They didn't make a mess out of our house at all. And at the end of the day, we had a beautiful new bathroom. And it was a great experience the whole way through.
We have the best monthly payment programs in the industry, with payments as low as $68 per month, or no interest, no payments for 18 months. For a limited time, be one of the first 100 callers who schedule a free in-home consultation and receive $500 off.
1-800-857-8541. That's 1-800-857-8541.
Factory trained and certified installers made in the USA, and discounts for seniors and military. BCI Bath & Shower, the leader in affordable bathroom products.
Need life insurance? Select Quote found Jacob, 40, a $500,000 policy for only $19 a month. And Select Quote found his wife Wendy, a $500,000 policy for only $17 a month.
Our secret? At SelectQuote, we aggressively comparison shop up to 10 highly rated companies to find you the company with the best rates. Why pay more? Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Every 2 minutes, a woman in the U.S. is diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's why when others look away, we lean in. We're fighting alongside patients because we know one moment can change everything. With your help, more moments of hope are possible. Join our fight. Save lives.
Well, that's going to close it out for what has been another long week. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll be back here Monday, and I'll be joined by the person who has shepherded getting those families reunited that were separated at the border here. Again, that and much more coming up Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Till then, have a good one.